That's right, we're using baseball references today. It was a total swing and miss for William Byron today, but perhaps a swing of good fortune for Jimmie Johnson, his teammate. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. The first race of the Dover doubleheader is complete. That's right, if you are watching this on Saturday night, set your alarms because, well, of course, there's the Indianapolis 500 tomorrow afternoon, but there's another cup race in less than 24 hours from the Monster Mile. Gonna be interesting to see what people learned from today's race, how that might transfer over into tomorrow's race, but today we're gonna focus on Saturday's NASCAR Cup Series race. Denny Hamlin, another huge day for him. He gets his 6th win of the season, tying Kevin Harvick for the most wins in the Cup Series this season. But the reason this win, I would say, is arguably more significant than any of the others for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, this is the first win by either of those two drivers. Harvick and Hamlin have dominated this season, but this is the first win at a track using the 750 horsepower lower downforce rules package. All of Harvick and Hamlin's wins to this point this year have come at the 1.5 or 2 milers or super speedways or Darlington, which is still technically an intermediate track. Neither driver had won at a 1 mile or shorter track that uses the 750 rules package, but Hamlin won today, and Kevin Harvick still had top 5, top 6 speed, but was noticeably off from what Hamlin was running. The reason that's significant is because the championship race at Phoenix at the end of the year, that is a 1 mile track. That is going to be using the 750 rules package, low downforce, the same exact rules package that we saw today at Dover. Of course, the track handles completely differently, drives and races completely differently than Dover, but the one similarity they share is the exact same rules package. So Hamlin winning today sends a pretty big message towards Harvick regarding the ongoing championship battle. And the second thing, like I said, is the fact that Harvick did not show race winning speed or pace at any point in today's race. So a pretty important day for Denny Hamlin. We will talk about that in today's episode. We're going to talk about the top finishers. Of course, we are going to put this race on my patented Groovy gauge. I used to call it experimental, but I think it's past all the trials at this point. The Groovy gauge is law. We'll get to all that in just a few moments, but to start today's episode, I want to look at the top finishers and I want to focus on the point standings because, like I said at the very top of the show, it was a huge day for one Hendrick Motorsports driver and a pretty catastrophic day for another Hendrick Motorsports driver. So let's go and look at the top finishers really quick and then discuss what happened in the points. Dominant performance today from Joe Gibbs Racing with their driver sweeping the top 3 positions. Kevin Harvick does get a top 5 finish, but he was well off the pace compared to guys like Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin at the end of the race today. Chase Elliott once again carrying the banner for Hendrick Motorsports, the top finishing Chevy, but his teammate Jimmie Johnson ran about 7th place almost the entire race. He finished 8th in stage 1, 7th in stage 2. He finishes 7th for the final race. That's 7 stage points, a lot of 7s. 7-time champion, oh my gosh. A lot of 7s for Jimmie Johnson, but my point is he made up 7 points just in the stages alone, plus a top 10 finish. Jimmie Johnson came into today's race 25 points below the cut line. And the driver who was ahead of him in 16th, you don't see on this list anywhere. William Byron had a catastrophic day. William Byron had a 25-point cushion coming into this race, but if we look at the point standings right now, he is 3 points behind Jimmie Johnson, a 28-point swing. Look, we know Jimmie Johnson, historically speaking, is fantastic at Dover. Honestly, and I talked about this past week, this weekend had to be circled on the 48 calendar as a weekend they could make up a lot of points, being a doubleheader weekend, being a track that Jimmie has won so many races at historically. But I'll be honest, I didn't expect him to make up all 25 points in one race, but he did today because William Byron finished the race 2 laps down. They just could not get a handle on the car, and there's radio played on the NBCSN broadcast with William Byron and crew chief Chad Knaus. It sounded a lot like Jimmie Johnson and Chad Knaus over the years when the two of them would kind of get chippy back and forth with each other.
Tell you what I see, or just want me to let you run like try to help? I run like because I can't get in the corner right now. I'm trying. I don't know what to do.
The 24 car never got better in today's race, and maybe some questionable strategy that Letard on the NBCSN broadcast actually mentioned also put them behind the 8 ball. So William Byron ends up finishing this race in 28th position. That is absolutely catastrophic in a day when Jimmie Johnson ran as well as he did, collected points in both stage 1, stage 2, and got a top 10. Really a worst case scenario, a total swing and a miss for William Byron and the 24 team. This is what happens when you don't have practice and you don't have qualifying, you don't have any track time before the cars take the green flag for the actual race. Sometimes you hit the setup, sometimes you just miss it, and there's only so many changes you can make to the car during the race itself. With a young driver behind the wheel, remember, William Byron is only in his 3rd year in the NASCAR Cup Series. Chad Knaus, of course, a very experienced crew chief, but let's be honest, even at the end of his Jimmy Johnson tenure, it sounded like the two of them were not on the same page. I don't know how much of the issue is Chad Knaus just forgetting how to set up the cars or not being adjusted to new rules packages, or how much of it is really just Hendrick Motorsports in general and Chevrolet in general not being as competitive the last couple of years as they were historically during the rest of the 2000s and before. I think it's both. I think the cars coming out of Hendrick Motorsports just in general are not as good as they were a few years ago, so I'll cut Chad Knaus some slack on that one. But I do worry about his communication with William Byron, and that did come through a little bit during their sort of frantic discussion we heard over the radio at one point today when Byron was on the verge of going 2 laps down, which he eventually did, losing the handle on the car, and they just did not seem to be on the same page. Of course, we've heard, like I said, we've heard those types of interactions between Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson historically, and they've come back to win races and do really well, so it may be a whole lot of nothing, but certainly I detected a fringe of desperation, a fringe of helplessness, honestly, in that conversation between Chad Knaus and William Byron, something that honestly they need to fix overnight. There's only now 2 points-paying races left before the playoffs start, and one of them is Daytona, which all bets are off. So tonight may very well be one of the most sleepless nights William Byron and Chad Knaus have had this entire season, because they've got to fix something. They've got to take a total swing at that car and get it right before tomorrow's race, because they cannot survive another 25th place run tomorrow. They need to be more competitive than that, or just hope Jimmy Johnson blows an engine, because you hate to put all your eggs in the Daytona basket next week. That race, all bets are off. It's going to be chaos. We already know. Putting all your eggs in that basket, making that a must win, just dangerous. That's not something I would want to rest my laurels on. Now I'll stop piling on William Byron for a second here, because Matt DiBenedetto, you see him at the very bottom there of the finishers today. He finished 20th, second week in a row where I would say he disappointed me. Last week he ran 15th at a road course where, I don't know, historically speaking, I thought Matt DiBenedetto would be a contender last week for the win. He was not, and another bad performance today from Matt DiBenedetto's team. He is also, as you saw in that graphic a minute ago, he is only 27 points now ahead of, I guess, 17th place is William Byron, so he's not out of the woods yet either. Another bad race tomorrow, and Jimmy Johnson or Byron have a good race. Eric Jones is still in the mix somewhat. Daytona is just way too unpredictable. You can go there with the best car and finish last. It happens quite frequently, honestly. So Daytona is not the track you want to be in a must-win scenario for, you know? Anyway, once again, there is a look at your top 20 finishers. A few drivers not mentioned there. I'll talk about really the only super eventful thing that happened in this race, and it happened before the competition caution. Kurt Busch coming out of turn 2 got a little loose or something. He lifted ever so slightly. Eric Jones was all over his back bumper because he'd been trying to make the pass. Jones ended up spinning Kurt Busch out. Jones and Alex Bowman actually made contact, so the two of them had damage that they had to kind of limp through the rest of the race with, but Kurt Busch was completely taken out of the race. That's Kurt Busch's first finish outside of the top 25 this season since the season opening Daytona 500. Kurt Busch has been the epitome of consistent this year. I mean, consistently like 6th to 15th. I mean, he's rarely contending for wins this year. We haven't seen that very much, but he's always like 10th or 11th or 8th, you know? That's Kurt Busch. That's his sweet spot. That's his zone. So seeing him involved in a wreck early on and finishing well outside the top 30, his worst finish of the season, like I said, his first finish outside the top 25 in 7 months. That's honestly just a testament to how consistent he's been. But Kurt Busch still good on points, so really no worries there going into these last 2 races. A lot of people blaming Eric Jones for spinning him. I don't know. I think it's a racing deal. It's a fast track, a close quarters racing type track. Kurt Busch clearly lifted on corner exit, which usually you shouldn't do unless you're about to hit the wall. So I think Kurt Busch lifting like that is the only reason Eric Jones even got into him. And I don't know. I don't think you can't really blame Eric Jones for that. I think, Kurt Busch is the one who kind of got out of shape on his own. So, but just a racing deal. But that was really the only major incident of today's race. The race did have an exciting finish. Martin Truex Jr. looked like he was going to cruise to victory, but then maybe got held up in lap traffic a little bit. Clearly the handling just went away, and his teammate Denny Hamlin was able to come from a 1.5 seconds back in just a few laps to right onto the 19 cars bumper, and he was able to use the high side to make the pass on Martin Truex Jr., get the momentum at least, and then pass him on the bottom. So the last 10 laps were pretty eventful in what was an otherwise very uneventful Dover race. This was the first race at Dover this season, the first race since last year they ran the high downforce version of the rules package, which I think we agreed last year did not make Dover any better than it has been traditionally. I had high expectations for this race. The low downforce package has been good at the other 1 mile and shorter tracks this year, as expected. And it was fun today to see a lot of the cars sideways, out of shape. We saw it in the Xfinity race, and we saw it probably more so, honestly, in the Cup race today. Guys like Brad Keselowski just drifting through the corners almost consistently and running fourth while doing it. I thought the NBC broadcast today was pretty good. I know I gave them grief last week, mainly because of the way they cut away from the race and cut all the post-race from their coverage, sort of without explanation. That was frustrating last week, but I'll give NBC Sports a lot of credit this week. They were able to showcase most all of the major battles. They were doing a lot of split screen, showing you multiple battles for position at once, which I thought was fantastic. And they were able to catch a lot of the close call moments in today's race. A lot of moments where drivers almost looped it around. They got that part when Jimmy Johnson almost ran into the back of Ryan Preece when Preece tried to pit from the second or third lane. He tried to pull a Quinn Alf at Texas, and it almost went just as bad as that did, but Jimmy Johnson missed him by that much. Anyway, NBC Sports did a great job of catching all that action and reacting to it, and of course we had a good finish, and they called that really well. So overall, I thought NBC Sports' coverage today was very good, so I wanted to give them props because I was very hard on them last week. But they weren't working with a whole lot. This was a 311 lap race, a 311 mile race, and what is usually a 400 mile race, and I'll be honest, this felt longer than some 400 mile Dover races, just because, especially stage 3, nothing happened. There weren't really any comers, there weren't really any goers, there was just the top 5. There was some green flag pit stops where nothing really happened, not a whole lot of jostling in the top 5 or top 10 happened. It really was boring until the last 10 laps when Hamlin mounted a charge and made the pass on Truex for the win. That was fun. That was really great. But that being said, a boring race with the low downforce package at a short track, or it's not a short track, but at a track like Dover is better, I'd say, than a boring race with the high downforce package at this kind of track. So it had that going for it. And again, the first 2 stages were pretty fun, and NBC did a great job highlighting in the moment the ongoing points battle between Jimmy Johnson and William Byron. So I think they deserve a lot of credit for highlighting that as well and as frequently as they did early on. But they didn't really mention it in the second half of this race because there was just no changes for position. And so there really wasn't anything to update the fans on. Overall, I was disappointed in today's race. Dover is a hit or miss track. I can't really think of any great races at Dover historically. A lot of people point to 2016, that race when Jimmy Johnson caused a big wreck after spinning the tires on the restart or missing a shift or something. And then afterwards it was, I think, Matt Kenseth versus Larson and Chase Elliott in a great 3-way battle for the win. That was a lot of fun back in 2016, but other than that, that's really the only great Dover race I can think of in recent memory. And I don't even know if I'd call that race great. It was just chaotic and then exciting for the final 20 laps. I don't remember if the whole race was great. Dover is an extremely unique track, which is why I like it being on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule, but it doesn't always produce fantastic racing. It's okay usually. And that's really how I felt about today's race. Yeah, it was a little dry, not super eventful, and I must admit, with the low downforce package being reintroduced this year, I really had higher expectations for today's race, but I guess it is what it is. I'll be curious to know what you guys think, but let's put this race on my Groovy gauge. I'm going to give today's race, you know what? In honor of Jimmy Johnson having a fantastic points day, I'm going to give it a 48% because I can't say this was a perfectly average race. It was definitely slightly below average, but I don't want to give it a 40 or a 45 because that leaves the impression that it was a bad race or that I regret watching it. And I wouldn't go that far, but I am going to give it a slightly below average score, 48% for me on the Groovy gauge. But let me know what you guys think down below. I am still excited for tomorrow's race because at the very least, stage 1 is going to be eventful because we got the field inverted. You're going to have fast cars like Hamlin, Harvick, Truex, Busch coming from the back, trying to make their way up to the front. That's going to be cool to watch. But yeah, that's my score for today's race. Let me know what you guys thought of today's race at Dover, the Dryden 311. I like the name of that race. That's cool. I like 311 miles. Maybe we should have more races around 311 miles going forward, but that's a conversation for another time. But I appreciate you guys watching this video. I hope you have a great rest of your Saturday night, and I will see you all again tomorrow. Be sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, continue the conversation on all other forms of social media. Of course, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. Couldn't do the show without your continued support, so thank you very much. Like I said, we will be back tomorrow night after the second Dover Cup Series race. There's another Xfinity race early in the afternoon tomorrow. Of course, the Indianapolis 500. I'll be watching the Indy 500. I might talk about it a little bit on my show afterwards, but hope you guys tune into all the racing action tomorrow. There's gonna be some flipping back and forth here and there, but hopefully you're able to catch most all of it. I'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great rest of your Saturday. Take care, everyone.